Go.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And just continue with this great conference right now. I would like to present Dr. Jamie Huff, who's going to do the next presentation. She's part of this committee that took this effort to have this conference going. So, Jamie.
Thank you, Francisco, and thanks for being here. This is a bigger crowd than we started with today. I am here to introduce two of our next presenters. They are going to be Brandie Leach and Pam Szcyzgiel. I did it right. Brandie is from our Sexual Violence Advocacy and Support Center. She's our assistant director, and Pam is faculty in our social work department, and she is also a faculty associate for the center. They'll be speaking a little bit more about sexual and relationship violence on the BSU campus and what kind of resources we offer. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. And what are we? Good morning. It's still morning time. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. As Dr. Huff mentioned, I am Brandie Leach, the Assistant Director of the SVASC Center. You might have heard it mentioned that way, or Sexual Violence Advocacy Center, or the SVASC Center. So many different acronyms we have. But I'm happy to be here today to first share our resources before we get into the climate survey that we recently did last academic year. So if you're not familiar with the center, we are now located in Moakley, room 130, which is right down the hall behind the computer lab. Last academic year, and actually just in the fall, we were located across campus at Tillinghast Hall, so very happy to have a new home here at Moakley. Our center is lovely and available to anyone, regardless if you are dealing with matters of sexual assault or relationship violence on campus. You're welcome to come to the center at any point for information and resources. Our hours, I should mention, are Monday through Wednesday, 8:30 to 3:30, and Thursday and Friday by appointment only. Oh, buttons aren't working. Our mission here on campus is to help reduce incidents of sexual assault and relationship violence. We also work with some community partners to help with collaborations and support throughout the area as well. We do this by providing confidential advocacy, prevention, education, and awareness trainings. And over the next few slides, I'm going to break all that down for you all. Most importantly here, our confidential advocacy is survivor-centered and trauma-informed and is available to all folks here at BSU. So that's faculty, staff, and students. There is a misconception that we only provide support to students, but I am happy to share that we provide support to faculty and staff in the event that they are dealing with matters of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. Confidential advocacy is, I uphold that as long as there are no violations within the protected categories that I'm responsible to, or I'm mandated to report. And so that would be anything dealing with minors, anything dealing with folks with disabilities or elderly folks over the age of 60, and also if there is any harm, a threat of harm to self or others. If we are not talking of those matters, then I'm able to maintain confidentiality when working with folks, as long as they are, I should say, when they are ready for me to share their information, I do need their consent to do so. So I uphold that to the best of my ability. And as far as the confidential advocacy services specifically, I am able to meet with folks one-on-one for support to discuss the impact of the harm that they're experiencing, and also to help normalize a lot of the reactions that they may be dealing with, which a lot of folks struggle with, just how they feel regarding the situation they're dealing with. And we are able to talk about that to really help normalize and reduce any stigma that may be surrounding their issue. We're also able to talk about Title IX advising and reporting. So the Title IX process can be very intimidating to students, especially if you are just completely unfamiliar with it. And for those who are unfamiliar, Title IX is the federal policy that governs all of the sexual harassment issues within a public institution. And so that would be dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. So I'm able to inform you of what that process looks like. We're able to discuss accommodations and supportive measures that are available to you, as well as the formal and informal reporting process. And it's helpful to know that information ahead of time because you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to pursue a Title IX investigation or if you only want to seek supportive or accommodation services. And that is available to you regardless if you file a formal complaint or not. I am also able to accompany you to meetings. So say if there is a police report that you are considering filing, or if you are wanting to meet with the Title IX coordinator, I'm able to be there as a support person for you during that process to help kind of clarify any information that you may be feeling too overwhelmed to understand, ask questions on your behalf, but not really interfere with the actual process itself, but just serve as an advocate to you. Another service available and very important is safety planning. And so this, simply put, is a brainstorming process between myself and the individual who is seeking support. And if you feel that you or the person is dealing with something that's a risk to their safety, we are able to spend time to really dissect the situation, analyze what resources are available to them to maximize their safety here on campus and within the community. This is done using different tools. Every situation is unique, and so no safety plan will look alike, and it is very much based on the person's needs. On and off campus referrals, on and off campus referrals are available to folks as well. And that's simply just us talking about, hey, what is it that you need? Do you need a referral to Academic Achievement Center? And here's how they can help you. Or do you need a referral to the Counseling Center? And here are the services that are available to you. A lot of students get kind of bombarded with information when they come here on campus as new students. So some of that information is lost on them as far as like what is available here. And I can help make sense of it all to folks who are dealing with these matters. And then lastly, a service specific to faculty and staff here on campus is the Massachusetts Domestic Violence Leave. And so that is available to any person who is dealing with a court or criminal hearing or process, that is going to require them to miss work. And we have a conversation with HR to let them know that they're dealing with a particular criminal justice matter and they're not penalized for the time that they have to take out of work. Any questions before I move on? And feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions at any point. Okay, alrighty. So I'm going to try my best to show you what the support form looks like for the SVASC Center. And so this form is used as a great way to contact the center when you need support or resources. And you're able to fill this form out on behalf of yourself or someone else. I'm hoping that I'm able to open this up to demonstrate how to submit one online. No. All right. Try one more time. No. Okay. Usually the links are live. There it is. Okay. Nope. All right. So it's wanting me to sign in. I'm not going to do all that right now, but I will just talk you through it and let you know where it's located. So our support form is only accessible through the BridgeNet page. If you go onto your student portal and you have all the information there, you will not see it anywhere on the student portal. You have to actually access it through the BridgeNet page. Simply put in the search bar, Sexual Violence Advocacy and Support Center. It comes right up. On the right-hand side of our page, you will see a thumbnail that says support form. Simply click it and it'll bring you to an online form that will come directly to my office or to my email. And it requires you to put your first name, last name, your email address, and if you're filling out the form on behalf of yourself or someone else, the date of the incident, which is okay if you don't know, you can simply put the day that you're filling out the form. And then lastly, the location of the incident, which is okay if you don't know, you can simply put on or off campus. Those details are usually discussed when we meet in person. The next section is very important because a lot of people kind of mess up the next section, and I'm sorry that you can't see the visual as I'm explaining it, but involved parties. So if you are filling out the form on behalf of yourself, it's also important that you put your name again in that section of involved parties, because otherwise I won't know that you are the person in, I mean, I'll figure it out eventually, but it's just helpful for me to know right away that you're the person who is submitting the form for themselves. I will need your banner ID. I will need to know if you are the victim or complainant, and then I will also need to know if there are other involved parties as well. If there are folks that are students here at BSU, you can include their name. Don't worry about their banner ID. Even if they're off-campus folks, within the community that you do have names of, you can still put their information as well. And then the third section and final section is where you select the category or the victimization in which you are reporting and seeking support for. There's a list that is very extensive. However, I would say don't get caught up in the definitions, but however you are identifying as a victim in that moment, that is the selection that you make. And then those details we'll discuss when we meet in person if we have to go forward with filing a Title IX report. Any questions on that? Okay, again, I apologize that I don't have the visual to show you, but it's very simple. One quick mention about an off-campus resource that we work with regularly is Health Imperatives, and so they are our community partner who provides sexual assault services to any students who are looking for support. They do that in the form of short-term counseling, and so they have the ability to come on campus to our center and meet with people confidentially if needed. They are also available to do medical and legal advocacy, so in the event that someone needs to get an evidence collection exam done at the hospital, they're able to call the hotline and get connected to an advocate. And as well as if they're looking to obtain a restraining order, they're able to get connected with an advocate to help them through the court process. Very great group of folks. I often refer students to them and haven't had an issue or complaint with anyone receiving services from them. They used to come on campus to provide support group, which that's something that we put on pause just due to low enrollment, but they're available to provide a weekly support group as well. And any other campus events that we have, they often hear tabling, say when we have different awareness events throughout the year, they're here supporting us as well. Okay, moving on to our trainings. So I hope that everyone in this room who is a student has heard of the SPARK course, because that is a required course that you have to take when you are first arriving to BSU. And so it's completed within the first 30 days, and it's for the start of the fall and spring semesters. That's one training that we're responsible for, curriculum-based. We administer it every year, and it's just an introductory to resources here on campus in certain terms, definitions that you may not be familiar with, but to help you get a better idea of the landscape of sexual violence and relationship violence. Next, we have Bringing in the Bystander, which is a nationally recognized evidence-based prevention curriculum, encouraging the community to intervene before, during, and after an incident of sexual assault. This training, this curriculum, we usually target towards student life professionals. So that would be resident hall staff, community organizations, student organizations, and staff that oversee those organizations. So if you are a part of any fraternities or sororities, student orgs, or even working as an RA, you might have been through this training or soon will be going through this training. Another training that we are very proud to introduce, and this is our first official year of rolling it out, is supporting survivors of sexual assault training, and this is specifically for staff and faculty, and it's really to empower them and help them understand the best ways to support students who disclose sexual assault to them. It's a 4-part training where they learn about the Title IX process, they learn about the neurobiology of trauma, campus sexual assault, and how to handle disclosures. And we just recently finished the first cohort of about 6 faculty graduates, so very happy to have them on board. And so they serve as allies now throughout campus for students who are looking to receive support. And then lastly, we're available to do customized workshops if you have a particular topic that your class or your student group is interested in learning more about. Happy to speak with anyone to work that out. We do a lot of healthy relationships, consent, sexual education, even safety planning type workshops, and it's always a good time planning that out with folks. Some of the awareness campaigns that we have on campus that you've probably seen around. For starters, we initiated a Red Zone campaign last year. And so I don't know if you aren't familiar, Red Zone is a period of time from the start of the semester to Thanksgiving break when more than 50% of sexual assaults happen on campus. And so this was something that we realized like a lot of students weren't aware of. And so last semester, we were in the dorms every Monday having a resource table, giving them information and resources about how to keep safe during the Red Zone. And so this is something that we'll keep doing in the years to come. Another awareness month is October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And this is the time of year where we have our red flags throughout campus, talking about if you see something, say something, if there's a red flag in your relationship or a friend's relationship. And so we really want to empower people and educate people on those red flags and what their role is to try to help intervene with any relationship violence. Next, we have World AIDS Day. And so this is every year on December 1st. We partner with health services where we are encouraging students to get tested, both HIV and STIs here on campus. The center is open for a certain amount of time. Folks are able to walk in and receive free testing. And this is just to really empower you with your sexual health. It's important that folks know their status, and especially also informing people on the intersections of how sexual assault, or how victims are harmed with in their reproductive health, their sex health through sexual assault. And so that's another awareness that we want to spread during that time. Another awareness campaign that we are very excited to share with folks is Sex Week, which is the first week of February. And this is where we are encouraging the community students to engage in having conversations around their sex and sexual identity and healthy relationships in all the ways that are usually really uncomfortable for people. So it's a very sex positive approach, prevention strategy that we are hoping that the community starts to really gravitate to. And so our center is open at any point for folks to come in to receive free condoms. We're also able to demonstrate how to apply a condom in the event that you've never used one before, or you just want to learn if you're doing it the right way. Like, we want to have those conversations with you. So our center is available for that. And this is the time where we really highlight that work. And then lastly, which is right around the corner, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. That is next week, April 1st through the entire month of April. We are talking about all things sexual assault related. We want to show support to survivors. We want to inform people of the harm that is done. And we have so many events happening throughout the month. And I've actually placed some calendars there on the table and outside in the hallway to encourage you to come to some of our events. So we hope to see you. And I think, and I have a calendar right here. So yeah, just a few highlights. Take Back the Night is a really big deal for us. We start at Boyd and Quad, we march here to Moakley, and we have a speak out. So students are able to come to the mic, share their stories, show their solidarity, and it's a beautiful, beautiful event. So if you haven't had the opportunity to attend, I encourage you to do so. Another one I want to highlight is the What Were You Wearing exhibit. And so that'll be happening the second week of April, where right here in Moakley, we are going to show you all the different ways in which the clothes that you wear do not dictate consent, right? And so that's one thing. Oh, well, what were you wearing? That's usually a very victim-blamey kind of language, but we're gonna highlight that it doesn't matter what someone is wearing because sexual assault happens to anyone wearing anything. And so that's gonna be a really powerful exhibit for us. I also wanna mention the open house from 10 to 3 on Wednesday, April 10th. We will have food, we will have music. Please come to the center and check it out. It's a beautiful space, very happy that we have the new space. So we encourage folks to attend. And the rest of the events, I'll give you a moment later after the presentation if you wanna grab a calendar and see for yourself. On the back side of the calendar, there's descriptions and locations and times for each event. And I will now turn it over to Pam.
Hello, everybody. Who here loves data? Everybody. Awesome. Wonderful. Well, this is the presentation for you. I'm Pam Szcyzgiel. I'm faculty in the School of Social Work And I'm newly a faculty associate with wonderful Brandie at the SVASC Center. That's a new position for me. And I say that because the data I'm going to present today is the 2023 data. So institutions of higher education that receive federal funding are mandated to do a sexual violence climate survey every 2 years. So we did it in 2023. We're going to talk about that data today. I wasn't there during that process, but I'm able to see the data now. And then we will be putting out a new climate survey in the spring of 2025. And almost all the questions will be different because we have new state mandated model questions that we're going to be using. So some of this data is going to change because we're going to be just asking different questions, okay? So a couple things I'd love for you to think about as I share some of this data with you. Number one, think about response rates, okay? Think about how easy, difficult, hard it might be to get people to respond to a survey about sexual violence, okay? Or to complete an entire survey about the topic of sexual violence. It's not an easy thing to hang in there with, and typically there are a lot of questions in these surveys. So people can burn out in the middle of it, say I've had enough, or if the material is triggering, it's going to be difficult for them to finish the survey. So that's one thing. Also think about disparities with regard to who is more impacted by sexual violence, right? Even though maybe majority of people filling out the survey identify as women and heterosexual and white, doesn't mean that that's the highest incidence within those groups, right? So I want you to think about that too, because when we put forward these surveys, we want to make sure that people are filling them out and that we get good samples with regard to a variety of demographics, okay? So just kind of be spinning your wheels around that as we go through, and hopefully I'll do this right here. All right, so I'm going to pull out a few things here. I'm going to use my notes as I do this. As you can see, the demographics of the respondents last time, highest was among women. So in terms of gender identity, we had mostly women filling out the survey, followed by men, followed by gender queer and gender nonconforming students, okay? With regard to sexual orientation, the people filling out the survey mostly identified as heterosexual, followed by bisexual, followed by pansexual, other, lesbian, asexual. Race. 78% of respondents were white, followed by Black or African American at 9%, other 8%, Asian 3%. You can see for Latinx, you see age groups. 20 to 22 was the highest response rate at 48%. And in terms of year in school, we see that seniors were the top at 25%, followed by juniors, sophomore, freshmen. And then you can see some of the, I know this is a little bit small, a lot of respondents identified as living off campus with their family, followed by people living in residence halls, and then some other mixtures of things in there too. Okay, so it's a little bit about who, just as like who is filling out this survey. Oh, what's happening here? Oh, here we go, it's fancy. Very good. All right, we asked folks, have you experienced sexual contact without your consent since you became a student at this school? 20% says yes, 80% no. This is pretty congruent with national statistics on sexual violence. Okay, so I'm going to point that out to you. This is the breakdown by gender. Okay, as you can see here, this is why I'm using my notes here. In terms of gender categories, this is where we want to think about disparities. You can see mostly people filling out the survey identified as being woman, then followed by man, and then we have gender queer, gender nonconforming, transgender man. But among the gender nonconforming and gender queer population, there's a higher incidence of sexual violence. Less of them filling out the survey, but the incidence is higher, and that's also consistent with national averages. where minoritized people by way of gender or race or ethnicity tend to have a higher incidence of violence, sexual violence, in terms of being victimized. Okay. And we can see again, most people identifying as heterosexual. And in this case, okay, we have the rates among bisexual students being highest at about 27%, followed by pansexual, followed by lesbian students, followed by heterosexual or straight students. I'm just trying to break this down into more bite-sized chunks here. It's a lot to take in. More demographic information here. Highest incidence among the Asian population, among American Indian, Alaskan Native, then Asian, then Black, African American, and white is about equal in terms of level of incidence within those demographic groups. This is also a really important slide, in my opinion, because there still are a lot of myths regarding when people are sexually assaulted. Is it by a stranger or is it by people that they know? So this really helps to debunk some myths that are widely out there still. As you can see from the slide, highest levels are among people said who had the unwanted sexual contact with you. Most of the folks are saying non-romantic friend, followed by acquaintance, followed by casual or first date, then followed by stranger. So the majority of respondents are saying they knew or aware of or are acquaintance with the person who violated them. Okay, so very important information to think about. Also congruent with what we know nationally. So we're going to give you a sampling of some other questions that were asked. And this isn't the whole survey because this would take us like 3 hours if we were going to do that. So some sample of the questions. We asked people, had you had experience of somebody called you or named or criticized you? And you can see the rates of that. Most people said never. Rarely and occasionally was about equal, followed by frequently, followed by very frequently. Okay. Gave you angry stares or looks. You said the majority of respondents said never, but then we see the occasionally and rarely, the next highest, followed by frequently. Accused you of paying too much attention to someone or something else. Never was mostly cited, followed by occasionally, followed by rarely, followed by frequently. Tried to keep you from doing something you wanted to do, like going out with friends. Most common, a never, followed by occasionally and rarely, followed by frequently. Did you use formal procedures available at your school to report the incident? We're really interested in this stuff because we want to know, do people know what those procedures are and are they accessing them? And if not, why might that be the case, right? That's pretty important information for colleges and universities to know or to be curious about. So you can see most people are saying no. That's a pretty big disparity there, 62 versus 10 people saying yes. And what you'll notice about some of these questions is we have people answering some questions in the survey, but not all the questions in the survey. I told you before, pay attention to how it might be for someone to complete this entire survey. Do they burn out in the middle of it? Are there questions that are sensitive they don't want to answer? So think of those things as well. We asked people, did they feel that administrators would take their report seriously? 34% say very likely, followed by I don't have enough knowledge or experience to answer this, followed by moderately likely, followed by somewhat likely. Administrators would take steps to protect the safety of the person making the report. Highest response was very likely, followed by I don't have enough knowledge to answer the question, followed by moderately likely, somewhat likely, and then not likely at all. I have confidence that my school's administrators will follow the procedures necessary to address complaints of sexual assault fairly. Agree, followed by neither agree nor disagree, so neutral. Strongly agree, disagree 8%, strongly disagree 7%. While at BSU, how useful did you find trainings you received in the following areas related to sexual assault? Which behaviors are defined as sexual assault? So how helpful did you find that training? Most of the respondents saying they never received training, right? Followed by very useful, moderately useful, somewhat useful. Brandie's telling us we do have some training there at the beginning, but a lot of people, you all get inundated with trainings and information when you begin college, right? So sometimes people lose information or forget that they've received it, so that's an interesting one. How useful did you find the training, how to report a complaint of sexual assault? Again, most people saying didn't receive that, followed by very useful, moderately useful, somewhat useful. BSU's definition of affirmative consent. Really important question here. See respondents mostly saying, I have not received this training, followed by the response of very useful, moderately useful, somewhat useful. A little trend here. Next two slides, really super important for us to think about in terms of the well-being of the whole student. Did the incident have a negative impact on any of the following? So here, respondents could check as many as apply to them. So this is a little bit hard to see. So let me right here. As you can see, there's a lot of impacts across various domains of people's lives. Mental health, relationships, social relationships, schoolwork, physical health, family relationships, jobs, are all variables within a person's life that have been impacted by sexual violence. This is one of the reasons we need to take this really seriously, help people be supported when they come forward, give them resources, accommodations, help them succeed. Obviously, if you've suffered violence, then your ability to kind of be in school and take in information and take care of yourself is going to be that much harder, right? So this is really important information for us to understand with regard to students. Another slide. Oh, it's easier to see here for sure. That's good. So this is also a bit alarming here. We asked students, since you have been a student at BSU, have you been in a situation in which a faculty member, instructor, or staff member did a number of things, right? So I'm going to give you some samples here. Again, respondents could check off whatever applied to them. So the highest response there was treated you differently because of your sex, put you down or was condescending to you because of your sex, repeatedly told sexual stories or jokes that were offensive to you, followed by made offensive remarks about your appearance, body, or sexual activities, followed by touched you in a way that you found uncomfortable, honing in on some of the others, made unwanted attempts to stroke, fondle, or kiss you, treated you badly for refusing to have sex. The lowest response was made you feel threatened with some sort of retaliation for not being sexual. So again, alarming that students are having these experiences on campus, and we want to shed light on this, which is why it's great to have us come out and talk to you all today and to be thinking about this incredibly disheartening problem, right, across campuses and universities in the US. So that's the bulk of the data I think I want to share with you all today. And we have some time left to ask, if you want to ask us any questions, Brandie or I, about the data, about the center, anything on your mind.
Questions?
Yeah.
I can say it out loud.
Yeah, good for you.
Okay, this kind of is like a question, like a what if question. So I guess if you guys had more like resources and then like, what would you want to see implemented in order to counteract like everything that your surveys have shown?
Great question. I'm gonna let you take that one. You got some ideas.
I have notes in my office. Can I go get more resources, more money? What would I want to see? What would we do on campus? For starters, there's an assessment program that I'm hoping that we can partake in very soon that will take a deep dive into our policies, to include response and prevention, and working across departments to really strengthen a lot of the areas in which we don't meet standards or exceed the standard. So, and that's a pretty expensive process. It's a 2-year assessment process, a pretty expensive program. So that is number one that I want to do very soon. And then I think after that, it would really just be about strengthening the center, ensuring that we have enough staff available to meet with students, to really increase our advocacy within the center, because I am the only confidential advocate here on campus. And so if there are students who are dealing with, or I should say more than one student who's dealing with something, and then I'm also responsible for prevention education, and I'm also responsible for giving you information in this way, that's pulling me away from the students who need to meet with me one-on-one. So I think increasing the folks that are actually in the center providing the work is very important as well. Those are just the main 2 ones. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Pam?
There's so many ways to think of support.
Yeah.
Certainly more of what Brandie does in terms of prevention, but also the aftermath. More counseling staff specialize in sexual violence, trauma treatment, things like that.
Yeah.
But awareness raising, it's like you all took the SPARC course, but a lot of people don't remember taking it, right? Yeah. So it's like, what else can we do to let the information really sink in, right? So we have one person in the center.
Yeah, just more of me
so.
getting out and
more
and educating,
more,
and supporting, and I think just
yes.
really assessing what our prevention looks like right now. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the starting point, and ensuring that it's robust, well-rounded, which I don't know that it really is. So yeah, that would be it. Yeah.
It'd be great to figure out how to reach more people with the survey and sort of incentivize people to complete, but it's very difficult, and we want to get good data that carries across all the demographic domains too. So that's difficult sometimes.
Thank you for that question.
Any other question?
Do you have like a restorative justice approach in some of the work you do? And one of the things I'm wondering about is those people who've experienced harm, do they get together and talk with each other about, and with you, about what they would really like to see to become more safe on the campus, and how they approach those who harm, and and what they would like to see for those folks for healing practices rather than punitive ones?
Thank you for that question. Unfortunately, I don't do anything that would connect me with the perpetrator or the respondent, I guess, if you're thinking of an official report. I deal mainly with folks who have been harmed. And so I think if they were looking for that option, they would have to go through the Title IX process. It would be under an informal resolution process. And then I also know that there are some limitations or barriers that don't allow us to do a full restorative kind of resolution for students. But it is something that we looked into, is something that we did consider implementing, but there were just some legality issues that came up. But It is an option through the informal route if students opt to do so, but that would have to be agreed upon by both parties. And again, that's not something that I would partake in just because of my role. Yeah, but thank you for that question.
Yeah, I have a question, continuing what Strong Oak just mentioned. So when you have someone that has experienced this type of trauma, they feel victimized again by just coming on and being open and disclosing the information. What kind of approach do you take into protecting the victim or the survivor? And also the confidentiality issue. They feel vulnerable. So what do you do in these cases?
So for me, when I meet with students, I do not require them to share any details that they don't feel comfortable sharing. You just want to talk about reporting, that's all we have to talk about. So I meet them where they are. That's a kind of a really simple tool, or I guess approach, that I learned very early on in my advocacy, is you meet the person where they are, what their needs are, you center them in their needs, and that is all you deal with. And so I don't ask questions if I don't need to know the questions. I don't require them to share details. A lot of folks, I don't know the extent to a sexual assault because I don't ask that information. It's whatever they feel comfortable with sharing. And then also, okay, how do we get you the help that you need? What is it that you need? And if you don't know, I can tell you all the things, and then we can sit here and talk about it together. So a lot of times I don't know the ins and outs of the students and their situation. It's very much up to them.
Do you make an assessment to report this to the police?
So no, because I am a confidential advocate. I do not report to the police unless someone is saying, hey, I want to go to the police. And again, unless it falls within the protected categories that I'm mandated to report on, which I haven't had to deal with yet being here at BSU. And so if there's a situation where I feel police interference in the criminal justice pursuit is an option and very important, then I will strongly encourage them, and I will give them an overview of what that process would look like and the supports that are available to them during the process. And sometimes it takes folks some weeks, maybe months, but I'm always very happy when they decide, you know what, I think I'm ready, because it's incredibly important that people get accountability, or people are held accountable. So, but that's not something that I do without their permission, consent. Informed decisions are very important. So that's what I prioritize.
Hello, thank you so much for this presentation. I teach a crime theory class here on campus, and I'm always asking my students about how well do you know your neighbors, collective efficacy, and are you willing to engage and act and report? And so connected to that is this idea you had referred to about the bystander training. And so I just wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit more about that training, and has there been any impact that you've seen in terms of people reporting that are not specifically part of that incident, but are willing to act?
That's a very good question. Thank you. Okay, so first I'll start with the training. So the training is intended to, one, educate people on the importance of, or I should say even defining what a bystander is, or an upstander. They try not to use, although it's called bystander intervention, they try to use the more empowered kind of active language of upstanding, so intervening, being present, and making decisions in the moment that will help to reduce risk or harm. So educating them on what that is. And then there's also scenarios of real situations that have happened on campus that kind of outline many opportunities where a bystander could have taken action to prevent or to help in a situation. And so we kind of, is case scenarios, so we analyze that and discuss where it broke up, where it failed. And then I think another really important element of the training is where it talks about just the social response, and when you have situations that are normalized, that you have a reduced likelihood of intervening, right? So if we are in a climate that is very high with sexual harassment and it seems very normal to us and a minor issue, then those incidents will be happening at a higher rate and will be less likely to respond, right? So kind of analyzing that data to see what's normalized in certain communities and what the response rate is or the intervention rate in those situations. And then also like why we need to reverse our actions in those moments. And then, I mean, there's a lot of different elements. It's a very long training. It's about 2.5 hours long. And so for that reason, it's not something that I get to deliver as much as I would like to because it's a significant time commitment. I think where my role or where I execute that mostly is just training the professionals that will train the students. And so then the data I'm not familiar with to see like how it's helping in those particular departments. So I can't answer your second question, but it is a very, it's a quality training. And I do recommend if people have the time to definitely commit to it, but it's 2.5 hours. Like who's, you know, class, you can't really do that within your class unless you're a night student, like Pam teaches 3-hour classes, yeah. So yeah.
Questions?
There's one up there. Ooh, that's a very good question. So we do have work study opportunities at the center, and that would be the closest that one could get to being trained as an advocate. You would not serve in the role of as a confidential advocate like myself, but some skills are taught. The confidentiality is required to be upheld when working at the center. You do learn how to, in real time, support someone if they were to walk in the center and be in crisis and kind of like seeing what that looks like. And then also you would get an idea of understanding the landscape of campus sexual assault, Title IX process to be informed and able to share that information with other students as like a peer educator. So that would be your opportunity to work within the advocacy field here on campus. Thank you for that question.
Those students who are in leadership positions, for the students who are in like more leadership positions on campus, like RAs, or like I guess e-board members, like clubs and stuff, what would you, I guess like ideally want us to like say or tell our members?
Hold on, let me put the microphone so we can hear what you.
Okay, so for all of us students who like are in leadership positions here on campus, like RAs or like e-board members of clubs, what would you want us to tell like our members or our residents in terms of the Sexual Violence Center? So like I guess, can use myself as an example. My freshman year, I didn't really know what the Sexual Violence Center like did until I kind of needed to use it. And now that I'm an RA in Shadurgan specifically, I'm noticing that a lot of my residents don't feel comfortable going to Title IX or the Sexual Violence Center because they don't know what the difference is and they just automatically think it means that the other person's gonna get in trouble for things that they've done or like they would, I don't know, have to go to court.
Okay, thank you for that question. So many things. Most importantly, I would want students to know that my sole purpose here on campus is to support them in whatever way that looks. And I am not a formal reporting option. I do not have to tell anyone what has happened to you, again, as long as it doesn't fall within one of the protected categories, which again, I haven't had to deal with since being here at BSU. So your information, your story, your truth is safe with me as long as you want it to be. I am really passionate about what I do. I am survivor-centered. I am trauma-informed. And so I do my best not to make you sharing your truth with me more traumatizing or re-victimizing you in any way. And I work at your, like I really encourage students and tell them like, you are in charge of this process. Whatever you want to happen will happen. And we have all the time in the world, as long as you're a student here at BSU, to figure that out. And sometimes people come and meet with me one time and then they're done, okay? And I'm perfectly fine with that. I respect that to the fullest extent. And then other folks, I have a more long-term relationship and I support them, you know, throughout the academic year and maybe even another academic year, and that's cool too. So I am here as a resource, and I want people to feel comfortable and safe enough to seek support from the center because we're here for you. And again, I just want to stress, we are not a formal reporting option. We're not a formal resource. We are confidential, and we will uphold that as much as we possibly can, as long as the law doesn't, again, interfere. And I have to keep saying that just as a disclaimer, but I think that would be it. And there's no shame in your experiences. So I think that's another thing that keeps people away, the stigma, the shame. There's no shame in what you dealt with. I think if folks were more vocal about what they've experienced, then probably in this room there would be more people that would relate on this topic than you would realize. And so be okay with seeking support because you cannot do it alone. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
When you refer to as long as the law allows, does that mean that if a woman or anyone chose to report to the police and then it went on into the legal system and the person who may be still on campus, who was the person who has done the harm, if they choose to get the records from you, you know, does that become a problem? I know that I've worked at, you know, sexual assault agencies that receive state funding. That's their sole, you know, purpose for existence. And sadly to say that the records aren't kept confidential if they're demanded by the court. So I'm wondering if you've been able to bypass that, because there used to be a time when you didn't have to disclose that.
So I do have advocate privilege, and that's what you're referring to.
Work.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying it doesn't work.
Well, no, and I would say to ensure I don't keep notes, just personally, right? Yeah.
Yes,
so
that's
I
the way to
do
do it.
bare minimum information only, like if there's a referral, like that's
awesome.
dates and times of service, and that's really it. I don't keep
Right.
detailed notes of what the incident is. And again, I do have advocate privilege, but just to ensure information is protected, it's all in my brain.
I used to do that. You know, I had an LICSW, and I used to do that for the people that came to see me. But I'm aware that all the, you know, agencies that work under Jane Doe, they have to keep records to satisfy funders.
Yes.
And like then you've got this paper trail, and they no longer, you know, they're no longer able to guarantee that. But they do hold on as much as possible, and like you, what the councils would do is only put in there what they thought wouldn't come back to bite somebody in the butt if they had to go to court.
Yeah, that's
So
something
it's
I was
just
taught very
cool.
early, very early on. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
So how effective would you say that the SPARC training is in combating sexual violence on campus? And would it be likely at all to make it mandatory on a yearly basis?
It's a very good question. And I think the survey showed us that it is not effective at all, unfortunately. And for the reason that Pam stated, because people are getting flooded with information when they become students here at BSU, and it's just so much to make sense of. And so I attribute that to the reason why it's ineffective. And we do hope to move to a different platform that is more engaging, that I hope will make a difference for the incoming students. But what was the second part of your question? Forgive me, because I kind of spaced out.
Would it be likely that the campus or your center, whoever is in charge of it, could make it mandatory on a yearly basis? Because as incoming students, they do it once and then they forget about it. So I think if it were yearly, I mean, maybe that would kind of change something.
I doubt that will. Yeah, I doubt that will happen, only because right now we can't even get all the students that are required to take it. So to then have it be repeated every year, I don't know that it'll be successful with implementing that way. it's very hard to make prevention education mandatory at the college level. I think the only other way to touch, like a good touch point, would be maybe in-person orientation training, or maybe being invited to particular in different subjects, different classrooms, but I haven't been able to figure out a way to get it to where it's mandatory. Everybody's accessing it all the time, every year, and then also having administration support. I don't know that that would be something that we could implement. Yeah. Do you have any?
I mean, it's, yeah, I think
It's
the
challenging.
compliance piece is tough for you.
Yeah.
I do have a question about the survey. What could be like 3 highlights of the general survey? Yeah, 3 things that you can get from the survey.
Yeah, I mean that our rates of sexual violence are pretty consistent with national rates of sexual violence at 20% of students. That there's a huge disparity when we talk about Black, Indigenous, and people of color being violated at a higher rate. And I would say also students minoritized by way of their gender identity also are violated at a higher rate. So I think this just tells us we need to do a lot of work to kind of, first of all, figure out how to get more of the data so we have better information, so that we know how to better reach people and support people, and support them in getting the services that they need. I think that that's just a really tough, that's a little bit of a strategy that we all need to collectively
Definitely.
consider. Yep.
Is the data telling us that we have an issue here or not?
Well, I mean,
yes. One
yes,
person that's
yeah.
sexually assaulted is an issue, in my opinion, right? But I think, as Pam said, it is very consistent with the national average. So we're not an abnormal university, an unsafe campus in that way.
But it's an issue that doesn't
but it is,
really decrease,
yes.
right? It hasn't, right? It doesn't, it's like this data never decreases.
Yeah.
Like we always have a problem in colleges and universities with sexual violence. It's just always been a problem. And figuring out how to reach people is difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a couple folks up there.
Oh.
You have a loud voice.
I got a question for everybody, every student in here. How many of you ever heard about that survey and actually did it, or not did it but heard about it? How many of you never heard of it? What do you think about this? Because a lot of students do not know whether this survey was actually developed.
Yeah.
And see, that's interesting because it goes directly to your email from the Title IX coordinator for about a whole 2 to 3 week period. Reminder emails to submit. And we also do a community announcement, student announcement to let people know it's available and open to submit the survey. So I think it's just, how do we get it in front? Like, I don't know the best tool to advertise it. I don't know.
Do you have ideas?
But yes, if you have ideas, let us know.
Great question.
Have people announce it in class, so we
Yeah.
can try the in-person announcements.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's fair to say that the Clery Act and what you do in terms of confidential advocacy, that there's not a congruence, that what we see listed and posted, everyone familiar with the Clery Act in terms of it's a federal guideline reporting kind of agency where it
The crime
discloses.
alerts that you get.
Right.
Yep.
So is it fair to say that what we see on Clery is not consistent with what happens typically on college campuses?
Thank you for that question. My data only shows in the annual Clery report, and it is de-identified, so there are no names or any identifiable information that's submitted, but I do have to submit the dates and location on campus and the types of incidents that do occur. But that is done at the end of the year, and so they submit it with the annual report that is made available. But not in the real-time crime alerts. That information does not consist or is consistent with my services. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on this, can you talk a little bit more, I guess you answered some of those questions about the methodology, so sounds like it's not a random sample, it's, right, so it's sent to,
All the undergrad, is it all undergrads,
All
undergrads?
registered.
Every registered student.
so if I'm
Every
taking like
registered
one
student.
class this semester
That's-
as an undergrad, am I gonna get the survey?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and they're yearly surveys?
Every
Biannual,
2
every 2
years.
years.
Every
Every
2
2
years, yeah.
Okay, just, so, two things. One is, what other questions are in there that weren't part of the presentations? Like looking at any other demographics of their first generation versus not, family income, GPA, whatnot. And
Yeah.
the reason I'm actually leading out, but
Yeah.
bigger question is we have some graduate students
Yeah.
who are interested in doing research.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly on these topics.
Yeah.
Is this something with IRB permission, they could get hands-on original, well, identification, but de-identified data, like not the figures, but the actual spreadsheet they can run the analysis on, and possibly from previous years?
I would,
Yes.
Brandy's saying yes. So, I mean, the complicated thing is, in 2025, all of the questions are going to change, and we don't have control over that. The state will mandate certain model questions to us. Within that are certain kinds of demographic questions. But in terms of the
Previous
past
ones,
stuff, I would think that would be okay. But I wouldn't have the last say on that Title IX. The Title IX office is responsible for compliance in terms of disseminating the survey. So we
And
get
what are
involved
the
in.
demographics? Is pretty much everything you
Pretty
have in
much.
this presentation?
Pretty
Or
much.
is there something?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't think in 2023, I don't recall whether the first gen question was
We didn't ask
asked.
those, no.
I don't believe it was, no. But yeah, race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation.
Is there a way to see the survey?
Yeah.
Like
It's
before?
on, if you go to the Title IX website, all the survey data is uploaded.
Well,
at
are you
this point.
speaking the survey questions?
Well,
like
right,
the
well,
full-
theoretically, if a student wants to, let's say, use it for their master's thesis, they would first look at what the survey looks like
survey
before deciding
questions.
that this is the one I would go through the steps to get IRB and permission to obtain.
So yes, there is a way to see that information, and then the results, the analyzed data is on Title IX's website, available for everyone to see. Yes.
Any more questions?
Questions?
Well, thank you all so much for so much engagement. Appreciate it. Oh, wait. If you want to scan this QR code for our contact information and confidential advocacy links, please do so. Like, it's all there. Yeah. And thank you all.
Great job. A lot of questions.
Thanks so much. So we're on a break right now for lunch and coming back at 2 o'clock. Thanks for being here. I'll wait for you guys. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. This, you can choose this topic. This is why it comes with. Yeah, well, let's do like a half page to a page. No, just the assignment. And that's it. This is what it is. Yeah. It's like a summary or something that you like. Like the survey. What is that? No, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.